Nerd Wars. Over the course of the history of nerd culture, we've seen all sorts of ridiculous arguments and fights break out all across generational lines. Whether it be Star Wars versus Star Trek, or He-Man versus Thundercats, Kirk versus Picard, Pokemon versus Digimon, people still debating whether or not Space Jam is a good movie. Which I found out the hard way that is not an argument you want to get into on the internet. But where am I going with all of this? Well, you see, in the 1990s, in the realm of video games, no rivalry or fan fight was more prolific than that between Nintendo and Sega and their mascots of a red plumber and a blue hedgehog. Now, history has taught us that in almost every single category, Mario has come out on top. But in terms of both quantity and quality, one can definitely make the argument that there is one venue of which Sonic the Hedgehog kicked Mario's ass. And that realm, my friends, is the world of Saturday morning cartoons. Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, and grab yourself some chili dogs, because this is Saturday Morning Fever.
From now on, like your parents were, you are the secret force of hope.
They're moving real fast, they're the only one who can get there on time. They're never too far behind, they're always fighting crime. Undercover or facing adventure in the danger zone. Pretty soon they'll be off on a mission. Come and watch them go. Sun doesn't shine. What's the highest and show? Sun doesn't shine. Only the on the road. Sun doesn't shine. Just sit back and watch them go.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Fever, ladies and gentlemen. Last week, we took a look at the cult-following show Code Lyoko and tried to take a more deeper, darker, interesting approach to a really serious, mostly unknown show. This week, we're trying to take things a little bit lighter, give a little balance to the layout of Saturday Morning Fever, and look at a show that is bright, colorful, out of control, and damn it if I cannot make up my mind about this show. The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. First airing in 1993, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is one of many, many, many different versions of the sarcastic blue hedgehog that made it to animated TV shows. But going off of the fact that this show is based only off of the early Sonic games, how much lore or character or story do we really have to go off of? Well, given only the early games, what we have to go off of is that Sonic and his buddy Tails live on the planet Mobius and must defend it from the evil Dr. Robotnik, as he tries to take over the world by building a robot army out of cute woodland creatures. It's either the most evil plan I've ever heard in my life, or by far the stupidest. Although not nearly as well known back in the 90s when the show aired, nowadays it's a common piece of nerd knowledge that this particular version of Sonic the Hedgehog was voiced by none other than Family Matters' Jaleel White, who at the time was playing the infamous black nerd icon, Steve Urkel.
Did I do that? Did I do that? Did I do that? Did I do that?
And despite what you might think, he's actually really good in this show. His comedic timing is on point. He has some of the best one-liners throughout the show, and although at times his intentionally annoying personality can get to you a little bit, on the whole, it's a really solid casting choice.
Is he serious? You ever play William Tell?
However, the villains are the true stars of this show. Dr. Robotnik is an amazing villain, bumbling most of the time, but intimidating when he needs to be. He has an incredible villain theme. His exact brand of cheesy, over-the-top cartoon evil really works well for the tone of the show as a whole. And on top of that, one of my favorite things about it is the fact that despite the fact that this was the very first time that Dr. Robotnik had an official voice attached to him, he actually sounds surprisingly similar to what they eventually decided that Dr. Robotnik would sound like in the games.
I am hereby declaring Sonic the Hedgehog as Mobius's most wanted fugitive. To ensure his immediate capture, I am offering you the biggest reward in bounty hunter history. 1 billion Mobiums, alive or otherwise.
Question from the crowd?
What is it?
I'm worth way more than that.
The real villainous stars of the show, however, are Scratch and Grounder. You see, Dr. Robotnik had attempted to create 2 evil super robot soldiers that would work as his evil generals, but instead what he ended up with was a bumbling duo consisting of a 90s kids RC tank toy and a punchline I literally discovered while writing this episode, a literal robot chicken. Matched only by probably Bulk and Skull from Power Rangers, Scratch and Grounder are, in my opinion, one of the greatest comedic duos of the 1990s. Although, a quick disclaimer here if I'm being honest with myself, it is worth mentioning that despite the fact that I find these characters hilarious, they do consist of 2 of the best worst Saturday morning cartoon show voices in the history of the genre.
Sometimes I wish Dr. Robotnik hadn't made us so persistent.
He made me persistent. He made you too dumb to quit. You get the hedgehog to chase you. You go by, I drop it down, and the hedgehog knocks himself out.
Outside of that, the show is a pretty mixed bag. The animation of the characters themselves is pretty fine, but the backgrounds are absolute nonsense, and there's pretty much no rhyme or reason to anything, and it often comes off looking like something out of a Dr. Seuss fever dream. But by far, the most famous, or infamous, depending on how you look at it, segments of the show are the ending morality segments. Similar to bookends like Captain Planet, the show would end on these sort of Sonic Says segments, where he would give you advice on how to stay safe out there, and what things were okay and what things were no good. But the problem was a lot of these made no damn sense. There's one particular one where Sonic is surrounded by a group of robot gangsters, where he decides that it's not a good idea to call 911 when he's being surrounded and brutally attacked. Or one where a lowly passerby in the forest decides to tell him that you can always find your way when lost in the woods, because moss always grows on the north side of the tree. Which modern science would tell us is factually absolute bullshit. And then there's also the one where he tries to talk to all of us about stranger danger.
Kids, there's nothing more cool than being hugged by someone you like. But if someone tries to touch you in a place or in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's no good.
What? No. I don't have a joke for that one. I just thought it was weird. Now, judging by a lot of things that I've said so far, you might get the opinion that I actually hate this show. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, I really enjoy it. If for some reasons more legitimately than others. The fact is, this show commits to the cheesy, out-of-control, ridiculous kind of show that it is. And to some extent, that's actually very reminiscent of what you'd think that a Sonic the Hedgehog show should be. Out of control, belligerent, not really, answering to any sort of authority of what it should kind of be. It's edgy, it's out of control, it's wacky, silly, ridiculous, and stupid. But I absolutely love it. I think the only negative point people usually have against the show is that at the same time, they were also airing another Sonic the Hedgehog TV show, commonly known today as Sonic Sad AM, which took a much more serious, dark, and story-based approach to telling the story of Sonic the Hedgehog. And although it's hard to compare the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog as a goofy, ridiculous, fun time to Sonic Sad AM, which is often known as one of the greatest Saturday morning cartoon shows ever based off of a video game, but I do think that both of them have their individual appeals, and I think there's room in the world of Saturday morning cartoon shows for both of them. Sonic Sad AM is untouchable for a lot of people, but I do really love the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it's a ridiculous, out-of-control, amazing show. And it can be difficult to choose between the two of them, and I don't think you should. I mean, to many people, it's kind of a nerd war in and of itself, but I think that these two different shows of the same property appeal to completely different audiences. And if you like your Saturday morning cartoon shows, and you like them weird, wacky, silly, and out of control, there's very few I can recommend more than The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. That's all the time we have for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Feel free to leave a like below if you happen to like our video. Leave a comment below if you have a TV series in mind you'd like to see appear on Saturday Morning Fever. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ken Johnson, and feel free to tune in next week, Saturday Morning Fever.